I'm going to talk today about high needs parenting. I define high needs parenting as parenting children who require more time and energy from their caregivers. So, this looks like parents with children who have neurodivergence, have various diagnoses that can fall under that category, not simply diagnoses in that category. These are children who might have complex medical problems, they have mental health problems, they can have sleep trouble, they can have feeding issues, they can have speech delays, physical delays, mental delays, cognitive delays, a wide range of sensory problems, and all of these can vary in severity. So it's not as simple as a simple diagnosis or a complex diagnosis. And with that, this includes children who have diagnoses, who don't have diagnoses, or children or families who don't want to have a diagnosis, but also are looking to figure out how to address or work with the symptoms that are showing up. I don't necessarily require people, families, to have a diagnosis. In a lot of cases, there are families who are struggling to get diagnoses for a lot of these varying symptoms and problems because providers are not helping them in the manner that they need. I like to refer to these children as atypically atypical because a lot of the time they have the red flags for a lot of these issues. But there are times when those red flags don't necessarily look like the red flags of the more common red flags or the more obvious red flags. So the healthcare providers who are assessing these children or listening to the parents' concerns aren't seeing the same things that we're seeing at home. We're spending 24/7 with these kids and seeing a lot more of what goes on. And the healthcare providers are spending a lot less time during an appointment with them. And they don't see the red flags that we're seeing necessarily. And as we talk about neurodivergence and some of the symptoms that can show up with them, um, there's such a wide range in the symptoms there that providers are getting kind of stuck in the the common symptoms or the particular signs that generally are what is looked for, that they're not necessarily seeing the out of the box kind of things that we're finding with a lot of these children. And so if they're not seeing the run of the mill stuff, they're just writing off that these kids are potentially, neurodiverse or that they have these kinds of things. And they have created such a particular way to assess these children that they're not looking for them until they've reached certain signs or unless they've hit certain markers. And some of these kids may not have those markers because that's not how they present. And it's very challenging as parents to get those problems kind of assessed. So as parents, we need to be the advocate for our children. And this can be challenging and very long process, and it can be ongoing. And as parents, we need to learn how to handle that and how to work through that. And it can be it can be tough. And so I have worked through this several times myself with my own children. My oldest daughter has a feeding disorder that took us several years to get assistance with, several years to find care proper care for her and proper therapies and even a plan to kind of guide us through. And then she ended up backsliding anyway because we didn't have the support around us that she needed. And then years down the road, I ended up with another daughter who had even more complex issues that, again, I didn't have the support and resources that I needed. And this time I was able to tackle that much quicker and get the resources and answers that I needed. And she was diagnosed with autism and ADHD and kind of a host of other things that go with that. But um, it was me seeing that we needed those supports and fighting for that advocacy that she needed, that they both needed, but knowing what I was looking for and how to find that. And this isn't something that everyone knows. And I saw that because I spent many years working as a nurse and then as a nurse practitioner, and realizing that a lot of families don't have the same opportunity that I have and aren't seeing the same signs that I saw. And even when working with their providers, they're not getting the same answers that I got. So I'm working to support families of children with high needs and get the answers and resources that they need so that they can help their child thrive. And in the same respect, it's important for us as parents to realize and honor our own needs. We put a lot of time and energy into taking care of these children. They are a 24/7 priority, as all children are, but these children require more of our time, effort, and energy because a lot of them can't be left unsupervised, unattended. Many of them don't play on their own. They don't sit quietly ever. But a lot of them have to have constant supervision. They have to have constant guidance, or at least someone monitoring them continuously. These are children who often can't be left in a room without someone monitoring them. So, much like my own child, I can't go into the kitchen and leave her in the living room. She is unsafe alone. And the rooms are adjoining. So it's not like not like leaving her alone necessarily, but she can't be left out of sight. Nor can she get up and go into the kitchen without someone. Many of these kids are like that. Many of these kids may have disabilities that prevent them from moving around on their own and require all physical care. So it's very taxing on moms and parents to be able to provide this care. It's also less common for us to get respite, to get resources and support to care for our children, especially depending on where they fall in the spectrum. And by spectrum, I mean how severe their needs are. When we have children who have fewer physical disabilities, they're not necessarily seen as children who require outside care or outside assistance in the home or in school or other locations. So these aren't families who are getting support for childcare or, opportunities for the parents to have downtime or private time or, opportunities to leave the home. These parents are the only providers often for 24/7. And under that same umbrella, a lot of times these parents find themselves isolated and alone. Um, a lot of family, friends, community aspects are pulling back from families and children who have this kind of high need because they don't know how to interact with children who have high needs. And it's not necessarily out of malice as much as people don't know how to respond to children who require this much time and energy. These children may or may not have behavioral issues. And oftentimes these children don't know how to interact with other people at times. They are often, have sensory problems that cause them to be over or understimulated in a lot of situations, and they can't regulate their emotions well. So it can cause outbursts and things of that nature. And when people don't know how to respond to that appropriately, they may be quite inappropriate, or they pull back, and this leaves the parents isolated and alone. Or, in the same respect, parents pull back because they feel like they can't control their child, or they don't know how to react to their child in public settings. And they find that it's just easier not to go out when their child is having these kinds of feelings, these kinds of issues. So they just don't go anywhere. And eventually they find themselves alone, isolated, defeated feeling. And this can cause a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of mental health issues for parents, and a lot of struggle. And it's very challenging for parents to kind of balance that need for their child and the need for themselves. So at the same time, we need to find that happy medium where they can provide enough energy to their child to provide that care that the child needs, but also to care for themselves. And a lot of parents put this on the back burner. We have a generational stigma that has told us over the many years that as the mom or the primary caregiver or the default parent, that it is our job to give all to everyone else and give all of our time and energy and space to our children and do all of those things. And whether or not we believe this is a controversial issue, it is not an acceptable reality. We have to care for ourselves to be able to care for our children. We have to pour into ourselves to be able to properly provide for our families. And we're always hearing about you can't pour from an empty cup, put your own oxygen mask on. And while those might sound very cliche, I recently heard you can't charge a battery from a dead battery. All very true. And you can't help someone when you're not helping yourself. You can't keep giving to them if you are not caring for yourself. All this does is lead to parent burnout, which causes depression, anxiety, illness. Physical illness comes from this as well. So when you're sick and you're down and you're out, you're not providing care for your children. You're not providing appropriate care. And then you're bringing the potential for physical illness that you can spread to your children. So that is, one of the many issues that comes in with not taking care of ourselves. Along with that, there is research that shows that when we are down and our bodies are low, as far as poor energy, poor nutrition, and this all falls with low exercise, low energy, poor water intake, poor nutrition, all of those kinds of things, we are more susceptible to illnesses like cancer and chronic illness. There's a possibility of autoimmune disorders and things for them to flare up. Diseases like that are generally already potential for people, it's not something you can just catch. But if you are already at risk for those when you are in a low state in your body, those are much more likely to come about for you. And then you risk having flares and things of that nature that will end up causing you to have more problems. And then you're not in a state where you can care for your child who needs you more often. So we have to come to terms with there is a point in time when we need to pull back and slow down and take time for ourselves. And maybe initially that starts out looking like a few minutes a day, or maybe not all at once. Maybe it's 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at bedtime, or, a couple minutes scattered throughout the day. But this is really important for our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, and our overall well-being. And as a result, our child's well-being. And we need to consider how this will affect us and everyone around us. And then as we work into this, it builds and it grows, and it can become part of our normal routine that we become accustomed to, and that our family respects and expects us to do as well. And if there's conflict around that, then we need to consider the greater plan, the greater scheme there, because our family shouldn't be expecting us to not care for ourselves as well. So that's another topic though. So ultimately we need to be taking care of ourselves, taking care of our children. And when we do this, we'll feel better about the whole situation. It really is an overall encompassing factor. We can do better by doing better for ourselves, doing better for our children. And it really does make us feel as though we can parent better. We're already doing the best we can with the situations we've been handed, but now we have the opportunity to work on feeling better about the way we're doing that. And it's not ever that we're doing a bad job or that this is a bad situation to be in. It's just that it's different and we have to approach it differently. So we can take the opportunity to up level. We can take this opportunity and change the way we feel about it, the way we feel about addressing it, and the way we feel about ourselves, so that we can make things more easy. This is one of those times where we can't necessarily say that things will be easier. This is something that could possibly always be challenging for us, but we can come into it with more ease and potentially more enlightenment and take out some of the unnecessary challenges. We don't have to make this harder. It doesn't have to be so challenging. It may never actually be easy, but it doesn't have to be so hard. And we can add ease into it to make it feel better. We want our parenting to feel good, and we want our children to feel good. And we want to be able to take from that regardless of our situations, our children are happy and fulfilled, and we are fulfilled as parents. So when we can feel good about the things that we do for ourselves and our children, everyone in the situation feels better. So with that, now we have an opportunity to kind of take a step back and look at the big picture and see what can we do to kind of make those subtle changes or those maybe big improvements. It can be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be big or small. It can be anywhere on that scale. It can be anything you want it to be, really, and then grow into whatever you want it to look like. But taking that first step into doing something for you that makes you feel good will really have a major impact. Doing something that lights you up, even for a short amount of time daily, and even if you start with once a week, that's a great start as long as you stay consistent. But when you do those small things that light you up, it really will reflect out, and those around you will see it. They'll be impacted by it. And you'll start to notice that it trickles down. the water rolls downhill. You'll see that your family starts to respond to you differently when you're happy and you're not so short tempered and you're not so emotional sometimes. This is a very hard job and no one is faulting you, but we can also do a better job in the type of parenting that we want to provide our children when we can feel better within ourselves. So I encourage you to kind of take a look at the picture and see what you're doing that you don't really enjoy, and think about the things that you would like to be doing, the things that you do enjoy, the things that you miss, and consider how you could start to trickle those back in, or how you would be able to add some of those things. And also consider how you could incorporate more you time, or how you could add in time for your children and you, that would make things a little more fun filled or ease filled, and see how that feels. Dig deep down and see how that truly feels for you. And if you need any help diving into that or digging in, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you with that. Do some soul searching, dig in there and see what it would be like to kind of really get in and let some of the hard go and let some ease come in. And you might find that it doesn't have to be quite as challenging as it had been. But really start to consider what self-nurturing would look like, and taking care of yourself and putting yourself first. It really does make a major impact when caring for a high needs child.